Hello and welcome to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network, presented by Campbell's new chunky spicy soup. It's time to get fired up. I'm fired up. Just heard about the new campaign. Listening to the pod yesterday that you did with, I mean, you really had 4 guests yesterday. 4 or 5? 5?
5.
5
This is
guests.
how big your shoes are, man. You take a day off, baby bro gets some time in, and I got to call in the whole cavalry.
You really did call in the whole cavalry across the league, and no, it was great to hear. It was great to hear, but it was best to hear about the new sponsorship, man. This is awesome. I can't wait to see what that surprise is. I think per league sources, it might be Friday. Per league sources, yeah.
It's also not that much of a surprise. There are cans of soup from our new sponsor sitting on the stage. I think you can, and I basically said yesterday, we're going to see how spicy you can take your soup. So,
There's still
get ready to go.
There's still a little tiny margin of mystique. But,
get ready to watch us eat on air with the Lunar New Year jerseys as a bib or something like that.
Okay, yeah, I'm down. Yeah, I'm down.
By the way,
one of those
those are
jerseys coming, by the way.
They're supposed to be coming through.
Yeah,
I got to.
they're wearing them tomorrow, right?
Yeah. So I would like to have them on the show tomorrow, but we'll see how that works.
Wow.
Out. I'm waiting for the call that they're available for me to go grab them at what's the 50 Bay Street.
Oh, yeah.
I was trying to remember the address of Scotiabank Arena instead of just saying Scotiabank
The
Arena.
place that we go to 45 times a year at minimum. Yeah.
And I still don't know the address.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, this is what we have for the show today. So we're going to get newly minted broadcaster Trey Kerby to join us.
Yeah.
We're going to have Savanna Hamilton call us in from the road, see what's going on in Chicago. And then, before all that, though, you and I are going to just talk about this Raptors season, sort of where we are. The Hawks game, it was funny because it's probably the most, fun loss we've seen for a while, but, it is an adjustment period for me to just, watch the game, see the Raptors lose on a buzzer beater, and then just be like, yay, my typical response is wow, I just feel it's supposed to be heart-wrenching, but it's kind of not that anymore. So just check in on the Raptors, where they are, and, of course, go around the NBA for a little bit. But, yeah, I mean, I guess my question to you to start the show, Blake, is do you still watch Raptors games with the expectation to win?
Yes, because it's an entertainment product. It's more fun if they're playing well. And I do think that, look, once you're in the weeds of, a season where you're playing for your draft pick, and we can get into the draft pick conveying and stuff like that, but, the Tampa tank season where all the main guys were sitting out and it was none of the player development pieces other than maybe Malachi Flynn and I thought at the time Paul Watson until the knee stuff started kind of dragging him down. None of the player development pieces were that interesting either. So then it was I don't actually want the wins. Just get the ping pong balls or whatever. But big picture, outside of Tampa Bay, I firmly believe that you need to best foster development in a system that looks and feels and operates like it will when you eventually want to be competitive. And I don't think it's a good thing to blatantly tank when you have and look, I'm not saying that they should do everything to win games. Thad Young shouldn't be playing 25 minutes. Bruce Brown shouldn't be playing 37 minutes. Those minutes should be going to the young guys. What I'm saying is that if the games are competitive and the Raptors win 2 or 3 more games down the stretch than you would maybe just for the reverse standings, as long as that is coming about because young players are getting opportunity and doing well within those, that is fine, I think. The learning how to win and playing actual competitive basketball is a real part of player development for me. And I think the history of player development around the league in which franchises do it best backs that up. So, I will completely understand if people look at that game and say that is the platonic ideal of a second half of this season Raptors game. Couple young guys play well. They lose by 1 point to a team they're close to in the standings. If there are other fans who were really wish someone had boxed out Sadiq Bey, I would understand that as well. To me, it's what I care about and what I'm looking at game to game is at the individual development level. I'm not going to be upset with losses, but I'm also not going to be upset with wins because I think as long as those wins are coming in the service of player development, that can be a positive as well, or at least not a negative.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking you this is I'm kind of struggling with it, mostly because not that I don't understand what the direction of the team wants to go or any of that or disagree with that. My thing is just how do you evaluate in a losing environment? You know what I mean? For example, if I were to look at it, I'd be look, that game that they lost against the Hawks, you shouldn't put Thad Young out in the game late that game. You should probably go a little bit smaller if you really wanted to switch everything, because they were willingly switching Thad onto Trae Young. And ordinarily, I'd be like, I can't believe that. That's a bad decision by the coach, all that kind of stuff. But then in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, if they're trying to lose, which I don't think they were trying to lose in that game specifically, but you know what I mean? Like, it gets hard to evaluate when the end goal is sort of murky. Even small decisions like that, bigger picture decisions, I think it's easier to see. You can probably look at like a 10-game rolling average of a young player and see how they're growing. And for example, Grady Dick is really coming on a little bit, which is nice.
Yeah, I think a good example of this is not this game, but not the Clippers game. What was the game before the Clippers game? My brain is mush today. The Memphis game. So Grady Dick didn't play particularly well. He didn't play very much.
Yeah.
And then he closed out the game.
Yeah.
And it was weird because like it was a close game. It was a winnable game. And look, players absolutely do not tank. Front offices tank.
Yeah.
Coaches and medical staffs, maybe as like if it's a coin flip situation, they lean toward whatever.
But even in this current situation, we're not actually doing that right now.
No, they're not.
January.
And this is also like, and we can get into why. And it's a lot. Some of it's about player development and culture and stuff like that. Some of it is about even if you completely bottom out to the best of your abilities, you only got a 45% chance of keeping the pick. Mm-hmm. So it's possible you just do the Spurs a bigger favor by getting them, the number 7 pick instead of the number 10 pick. Yeah,
the Spurs are like, yes.
Yeah.
We just put Thad Young late in the game, and we're switching him on to Trae Young on purpose.
Yeah, right. But the Memphis game's a good example of like, it's not a good example of how to execute it, but like, hey, it's a close game late, and Grady Dick hasn't played well, but he needs the developmental reps. So he's going to be on the court, and if we win because Grady Dick bangs a couple threes, awesome. If we lose because he's at a place and doesn't have anyone to defend, whatever. Now, I would argue in that game, if that is the mode you're going into, he should play more than 15 minutes in that game. But he played 25 minutes in this Atlanta game. He came back into close. Mm-hmm. They did a little bit of the offense defense with him and Thad where it allowed for it. But that's kind of the thing. Like, I agree with you. It's hard to evaluate in these situations because, no, when you are back to being a competitive team, there's no way you'll have Thad Young guarding Trae Young.
Yeah.
Although I would not put it past Thad Young to be 40 years old when the Raptors are next competitive and still playing 8 games a year where he's good. So that part's hard. And this is why, like, I don't want to throw the games out entirely, but I really do primarily care about individual player development at that point. And that has to come within the system and the team context and stuff. Like, I don't want Scottie Freelance to take 40 shots just to see what that looks like. I wouldn't hate it, actually, if I'm being honest.
Honestly, one of these games, I would love to see that level of aggression.
I'm just saying I'm not advocating for that. Yeah. But yeah, like Thad Young, Bruce Brown, Dennis Schroeder combined for 88 minutes in that game. It goes north of 100 if you include Chris Boucher, who's also over 30.
Right.
That's probably the thing that, if that's still happening after the trade deadline, then I'm going to question that part of the plan here. Even like you add Quickly and RJ back in, those are young players. Like I saw some people suggest that like RJ's injury or Emmanuel Quickly's injury is tanking. It's like, no, if you have 23 and 24-year-old players, the player development reps in a new system, in a new environment with expanded role, playing off of Scottie Barnes, the player development reps are way too important to be, obviously you don't risk it, but you're not sitting down 23, 24-year-olds to like improve your chance of losing.
Especially in the case of Quickly. Like, he's coming into a contract here, and the better he plays, especially in this current system where it's most likely that he's going to re-sign because he's restricted here, that's going to affect, how he's going to be doing. So there's definitely no incentive for him or RJ, honestly. But I think the other thing, going to the idea of like, okay, because I think for me it's mostly just how do I evaluate coaching or how do I evaluate individual decisions in this specific moment where it's not the be all and end all to win every single game, which kind of was for the last like 10 years. Do you think there is an element where they're showcasing certain veterans at this current time? Because you know what I mean, I can't fully tell what their motive is on a game-to-game basis.
Okay, so I'll say this. Every NBA team has advanced scouts all around the league. There were like 8 at a game maybe the Memphis game. There were a ton of scouts there. Yeah. And that's planned out in advance, and maybe they thought Pascal and OG would still be around at that point. But NBA teams have scouts all over the place. They have pro scouts, they have college scouts, they have college scouts who check in on pro guys in the G League, and they have tape and book and background on everyone. If you look at Gary Trent Jr. starting and playing X amount of minutes and getting X amount of shots, and you think, oh, they're showcasing Gary Trent Jr., that's not really the case. There is a lot of data and film on Gary Trent Jr. at this point. No one's getting fooled by a little bit there. Now, with someone like Thad Young, who hasn't played basically all year, you could convince me a little bit. They're
But that one's so clearly injury related with Jakob
right.
going
It is,
down.
but also like it's not the worst thing in the world to show, hey, Thad can still, in an emergency, give you some minutes in addition to being like the best dude in the world.
Sure.
I would also understand if Otto Porter were getting minutes over the next couple weeks to just show like, or I guess the next week, because we're only 9 days out from the deadline. Just to show, hey, he's healthy, he can stay on his feet and not get hurt. I would get that. But like everyone knows who Dennis Schroeder is. Everyone knows who Bruce Brown is. Everyone knows who Gary Trent is. Like that type of guy. And this came up a bunch with Malachi's minutes before he got traded as well. It's like, here's the other thing about showcasing. If you play poorly.
Oh, yeah, it goes the other way. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a real risk to showcasing a bad player. So, anyway, I would understand it a little bit with Thad and Otto because of they haven't played a bunch and you want to show they're healthy. But like, yeah, Dennis, Gary, Boucher, Bruce Brown, like everyone knows who those guys are.
Yeah, I you know what? I agree with you, and I hear you on that. I think it's just like on a game-to-game basis, like it's going to be a little bit hard to evaluate each individual decision.
Yeah.
There's going to be so many motives that come in. I think the bigger picture, obviously, as you mentioned, is the individual players and how they grow. And so much of this, I mean, we've probably done, I don't know what you think, man, 30 segments on how is Scottie Barnes doing this season?
Yeah.
Let's talk about it for 15 minutes.
The number of times you put BBQ in the doc, and I'm just like here post gym starving. Like, all right, yeah, let's talk about BBQ. Let's get a spicy chunky gumbo soup going here. You know?
There you go. I was gonna
find some way to do an acronym with that with the guys on the team post deadline.
We will find ways to do food content on this show. Don't worry. we have a proven track record of that.
By the way, sorry, this is a complete aside, but I guess those photos that Hong Xing posted of you, man, you looked good, man.
We got, you know what? Put that on the rundown for Friday. You know, because we could do anything we want on Fridays.
Yeah,
put that on the rundown on Friday. We'll show those photos because it was quite
a good look. I need
quite the shoot.
I don't know what my equivalent would be, but like I don't know, Sneaky D's handing me like a band T-shirt that just has like a plate of nachos on it or something. I don't know, but you looked good, man.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah. Let's actually make that happen. Okay, we'll do that on Friday, but I mean, look, listen, we're gonna do another "How is Scottie Barnes doing" segment, okay?
Yeah, all the time.
And I think it was interesting because honestly, probably for the first time all season, I was like really spending a lot of time on dunks and threes, just like kind of like scrolling around EPM, all that kind of stuff.
When he was 6th in the NBA and in estimated wins added.
Because I was just thinking about that, and I was like, okay, how is he ranking right now? And so I went to Scottie's page, and of course they give you that rolling average.
Yep.
First 10 games of the season, Scottie was basically floating between +4 and +6 EPM. To translate that into like, your average thing, it's like he's basically performing at like a 95th percentile or better as a player. Mm-hmm. A lot of that was on defense and offense as well. So he was just really, really good on both sides of the ball. In the 15,
Scottie Barnes is all-star.
Yeah, exactly. He was doing exactly that. That's +6 EPM is what Darko was doing in that post-game press conference. 15 games since OG's been traded, though, he's at a rolling average of -0.87 EPM. Now, I don't know. Some of these, I'm not totally sure how it's calculated because there's certain games where I'm like, I don't know. I felt like he played really well in that game, but somehow, like, for example, in the Warriors game where the Raptors beat the Warriors by a lot, he was like a -5. And I was like, how? He did a great job guarding Steph Curry. How is that not showing up on the numbers? Yeah. So, of course, you can like kind of like look at individual items. But my point is, though, he went from like +4, +6 to now like -0.87 in the 15 games since OG's been moved. What are you seeing, at least on the statistical side, in terms of why something could shift that strongly? Like how, for example, is that tied to wins? And just, I mean, how have you made of OG or, Scottie's change in production since OG's left?
Yeah, so first, a little bit of background on that stat. So I've explained this before on air, but EPM, what it's doing is it takes box plus minus. If you ever go on Basketball Reference and you see BPM or you see someone cite box plus minus, what that is trying to take everything that gets logged in the box score and try to figure out how much that contributes to winning based on every game that's ever happened in the NBA and based on what a guy is doing. And then what EPM does is it tries to look at things like, okay, well, who did you play with? Like what lineups what line mates did you have? Did the other team shoot 100% on 3 or 0% on 3? What was the quality of competition like? It tries to adjust for that stuff. So it's very, very noisy in single games, as any stat is going to be. The real answer here is that it is really, really tough to, even if you are an awesome player, to have strong impact metrics in a bad competitive environment.
Okay.
So among the 9 teams at the bottom of the league, so this is from Brooklyn and Atlanta, who have are both 19 and 27. on down. So that's Brooklyn, Atlanta, Memphis, Toronto, Portland, Charlotte, San Antonio, Washington, and Detroit.
Right.
The bottom 9 teams.
The tankathon playoff
Yes.
picture.
Scottie ranks first of any player on those teams in estimated wins added.
Okay.
Now, Wemby's got him beat on like a per possession basis, but Scottie plays more than Wemby.
Okay.
Desmond Bane and LaMelo Ball are ahead of him on a per possession basis as well, just by a small amount. LaMelo obviously having a monster offensive impact, and Desmond Bane kind of, that's been very up and down in Memphis, but Memphis has been more competitive game to game than maybe people thought. So, and then Scottie's in a group with like Alex Caruso and Marcus Smart and Mikal Bridges as like, okay, how are these guys? So basically it's really, really hard to have a huge impact on winning when your team environment is as uncompetitive as the Raptors have been lately. And it basically takes a Wemby all-time good rookie season, or what Scottie's doing where he's a borderline all-star. And I guess Desmond Bane, if the Grizzlies were a little bit better and not in the West, would probably be making the same kind of, hey, I'm a fringe all-star. He's not going to make it, but the same kind of case.
Sure.
So that's really the answer, is no matter how, unless
so basically,
you are
if you don't
Wemby,
win, if you don't win, you're not going to have like impact metrics.
Right. Like you can, and Scottie's still a positive. Like he is still a positive on the season. 89th percentile on the year in terms of per 100 possession.
Yeah.
And because he plays so many minutes, he ends up really, like I said, of all the players on these bottom 9 teams, he has the highest wins added.
Yeah.
So he's doing the best job he can. It's just really, really hard for the catch-all metrics to look at a team that's lost as much as the Raptors and been like, that guy's amazing. It's just hard for the numbers to catch that.
No, I mean, this is really good because that's kind of why I wanted to tee this up, because it's great to get that context. It's good to get that explanation. You could put up the same numbers, but if you're in a losing situation, you're probably going to get dinged a lot more. I guess my other part is just, do you see a notable difference in the last 10 games versus like the first 10 games of the season?
I think the situation has gotten more difficult for him.
Okay, for sure.
I think, I'm not going to say, well, he hasn't driven winning as much, because like, I actually think his defense since these trades it's probably the best defensive stretch he's played in his entire career.
It's definitely the most workload he's ever had to take on defensively, and I feel like he's adjusting and getting better and better as it goes.
Yeah, and I think that's really important context. I think, we talked a little bit when the usage wasn't quite where some people would like it, maybe about like, was he deferring too much? Was he trying to let guys get his spots? Things like that. There's a lot of learning going on here when you take away not only Pascal, who was kind of co-handling the reins with him, but you take away OG, who was one of your best knockdown shooters, and you added multiple guys who, don't necessarily demand the ball at like a number one usage of, but RJ and Emmanuel Quickley are like very different guys to play with than Pascal Siakam. So I think there's an adjustment there. I actually thought his Hawks game was one of his better playmaking games as well, in addition to being a good defensive game.
He almost set up Gary for the game winner. It really should have been Gary. Could have knocked that 3 down, and you wouldn't even have to avoid all that heartbreak at the end, but whatever.
Yeah, so, I actually think tonight's going to be a really interesting example of how he's learning and growing in this role, because if you remember the last Bulls game, he had a monster game. He had like 31.6 assists.
Yeah, he was great.
He was basically playing the 5 against Vooch to close that one out, which we'll see if that happens.
And he was also double-teaming DeMar on the drives, too, so he was playing 2 positions at once. Yeah, for sure.
So there's a lot of context changing around him that for a guy in his third year, even a very talented one, is just going to take some time to figure out. And I think, I thought he played well enough, maybe not quite aggressive enough scoring, but the Memphis game was pretty good, right? Like they lost that game and he was a positive. I thought he was their best player against the Hawks, even though they lost some of they lost a lot of the starter minutes. I don't know. I haven't been discouraged by what's happening. This is kind of what I expected, that, the numbers are going to go up and down, and it's a lot, man. Like
for sure. I mean,
it's a lot. And like realistically, these last couple games too, like even if the Quickley and RJ stuff is an adjustment, like you took away the second and third or third and fourth best players on the team, third, fourth, fifth, second, third, fourth, if you include Jakob. Like it's a tough situation right now for a guy jumping, no longer having the, I guess, training wheels of, hey, Pascal can handle the load too.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, this is, honestly, it was just I go to the page and I look at the rolling like data set, and it is trending downwards. But I wanted the context of this and have the discussion, because at least to the eye test, seems to be he is still playing on a really productive level. And it's really just that, again, like you mentioned, trades have happened, injuries have happened. It changes a lot. Versus that first 10 games, we really remarked for a while, like, wow, the Raptors were remarkably healthy.
Yeah.
That was part of the reason why I was so disappointed to see them losing, was like, this is as healthy as you're going to get. This is as good as you're going to get. Like, and you guys still aren't getting results with the previous roster.
They played the same starting lineup for like 25 games, and like part of why I don't know. Part of why it was so fascinating was like, well, this keeps not working. Could you try something else? But also, like, how have you had the same starting lineup for 25 straight games? Like, nobody in the modern NBA has that kind of health. Okay, so I want to kick this back at you. So that's kind of the high level impact view of Scottie Barnes. What are you seeing more in the specific offensive role? Defensive role, I think we're in agreement that it's a heavy workload. You know, he's up to number 1 in the entire NBA in defensive positional versatility, how much you're guarding 1 across 5.
Okay.
That's ahead of like Peyton Watson, Haywood Highsmith, OG, Herb Jones, Drew. Like, he's ahead of those guys in terms of how much he's switching around. A little less so in terms of like, are you guarding the number 1 guy? You know, what's your role versatility? But he's carrying a big defensive load. Offensively, what are you seeing in terms of, you know, the scoring usage versus the passing usage versus just the aggression level overall?
Yeah, I mean, again, like, you know, you can refer back to our 20 other discussions about this, but of course, there's definitely the general like ask of, can you be more aggressive? The way you're in the fourth quarter, can you do it earlier in the game? That's always something that's gonna be asked of Scottie, and you know, hopefully that he gets there. You can give me reasons as to like he's reading the game, he's sort of adapting. By the end of the game, he solves it, and then boom, or he senses the urgency of the moment and he goes forward and boom. Or like he's trying to set up teammates to start the game, and then later on, if they're not going, then he takes over. I'll accept all of those as parts of it. I think for me, part of his transition to being the number 1 guy now is like, I want to see, you know, how his like individual play creation for himself continues to improve. Now, I don't need him to take every shot. Like the analogy before of like you know, I don't want to see Scottie take 40 shots. I mean, out of sheer curiosity, I would love to see that. But that's not a general ask that I like to see. I don't want him shooting contested shots over multiple defenders. There's no need for that, really. Even in this offense, there's no need for that. But I would like to see on a certain level for his individual scoring to go up. So there was a play at the end of the Hawks game where he kind of went one-on-one, and they tried to get a bucket. And I think it was actually in the last 2-minute report that did actually rule that.
Was this the one against Sadiq Bey?
It was like a missed foul call, something like that. But essentially, it was like a one-on-one clear out, get your bucket. You know,
damn, you're still looking at the last 2-minute report. I thought Ben Taylor's shenanigans ended this.
No, it's fine. Sometimes I like to look at it just to verify
just to get mad
if there was a foul. Yeah, you know, a lot of being online is like, can I find a way to get mad?
Emotional damage.
That's actually what that's they should rename the last 2-minute report to emotional damage report. But yeah, like he really couldn't like get that separation from his guy and ended up tossing up like a hook shot. Whether he was fouled or not, whatever, I guess he was. But my point is like he couldn't really create that space for like a scoring move. And I do feel like it's a very critical part of any sort of like go-to lead option to have like a go-to move or like at least something really repeatable that you can kind of do on a consistent basis that you can come back to. And I think that's where I looked into more in terms of like the offensive role. Love to see the isolation scoring jump up. So right now he's shooting 39% in isolations. That's 20th percentile in the league. Oof. In pick and roll usage, he's at 46%, which is actually pretty decent.
46% scoring out of the pick and roll as the handler?
Yes, just as a percentage. But, I mean, a lot of pick and roll scoring nowadays is pull-up three-point shooting. That's not an aspect that really goes in. So he's actually at 35th percentile. Even though 46% actually sounds like a reasonable percentage in general. Where he's done well is like spot-up scoring, off of cuts, off offensive rebounds, off rolls to the basket, off transition. Pretty much every other kind of play type he's actually really good at. But I think as the number 1 guy, you do need a little bit more of those two aspects. And that's where I'm looking to see more and more growth for the rest of the season is like, is Scottie going to develop like a go-to move that he can kind of go to like on a consistent basis? Maybe that's hard to do mid-season, honestly. Yeah. I don't really see a guy coming up with a go-to move mid-season, but long-term.
I mean, his go-to move is I'm stronger than everyone on the court.
Yeah, but I mean, eventually, like, come on, man. Like, that kind of defense is like, even Giannis will struggle sometimes when he was younger in crunch time, if that's the go-to move.
One small piece of encouragement. So we looked at earlier in the season, you know, Scottie's efficiency numbers with and without Pascal, because, you know, and a lot of this wasn't Scottie. It was you're playing with Malachi Flynn and a couple other guys.
The replacement is a big drop-off.
His true shooting percentage without Siakam on the floor for the season is now almost up to league average. And that's on like 27% usage.
That's pretty encouraging.
So he does have the usage rate kind of where you'd want to see it in the non-Siakam minutes, and the efficiencies come around. This does take us to, so Scottie is just narrowly above 20 points per game, which if this were like 10 years ago, that would be a good thing. But this sets us up for today's spicy take, brought to you by New Chunky Spicy Soup. Are you ready to get fired up? Will, are you ready for your Spicy Take Tuesday?
Yeah, this is a separate aside because I was thinking a lot about obviously isolation score, pick and roll scoring, whatever, right? It feels like obviously this is a big discussion in the league of guys are scoring 70. What's wrong with defenses? Guys are scoring 60. What's wrong with defenses? I think that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it, and this is my spicy take, 20 points in today's league is like a 15-point score in the previous league. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just, there's so many guys in the league that could put up 20 now, to the point where it's like you come into the year and you're like, well, Kyle Kuzma might do it twice in a row. You know what I mean? And it's like, no disrespect to Kyle Kuzma, but, you know, there are certain guys who are averaging 20 that I'm just like, honestly, in a previous era, like, you probably only be at 15. So basically 20 is the new 15 is a spicy take.
So I put some numbers on this for you.
Okay.
There are 54 qualified players averaging 20 points a game right now. 54. So
that's absurd,
basically
man.
2 a team.
That's 2 per team.
It was at 54 last year as well.
Yeah.
If you go back to 2010 to 2015, that 5-season range, the league averaged only 16 per year. So half a guy per team was averaging 20 just a decade ago.
That was always the benchmark of like, are you a guy? Can you score 20? You know what I mean?
And now Bojan Bogdanovic is averaging a 20 piece.
Who is give me the worst player averaging 20 right now?
Oh, I don't know.
Cam Thomas could be in there. I mean, offensive scoring wise, he's not like worst, but I mean, in terms of empty calories elsewhere, like he might be the worst player that is in that 20 range. Rozier's over 20.
Yeah.
Kuzma again,
although Rozier's average is shooting like 0% since he joined the Heat, so maybe that's going to come down. I really like Bojan as a role player.
Yeah.
And like someone should be trading for him at the deadline, but he's probably where like I look and I see 20 points a game. I'm like, man, that says a lot about the current NBA and the current Pistons.
Yeah. That one's tough. But yeah, that's a spicy take. 20 is the new 15. Like we gotta like, what's the new benchmark? 25? Is 25 then like we make the cutoff? The worst player
now I'm
averaging
looking
25
at
is
Bojan
LeBron
averaged
James,
22 last year, so maybe I'm being unfair to Bojan, but it's just I'm really not enjoying watching a lot of Pistons games these days. I watched Pistons Hornets the other day, and I was texting friends for helps. I know.
Yeah.
I know. So yeah, I don't think it's Bojan. Maybe it is. It's probably Cam Thomas in terms of overall game.
Yeah. This is the 25. You get to 19 players, and by worst player, I meant like LeBron's the lowest player on that list at 25 points.
Yeah. So that and like I said, from 2010 to 2015, only 16 guys per season averaged 20. So if 19 are averaging 25, I think that's a good.
Sounds about right.
That's a good benchmark. That was today's spicy take, brought to you by New Chunky Spicy Soup. Ready to get fired up? Ready to take a break and talk to the G League's newest broadcaster?
We are. Yes, we are. That was actually really cool to see that take place. So we are going to bring in Trey Kerby after this break, but we are going to take that break. I've been your host, Willow. You've been listening to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network, presented by Campbell's new Chunky Spicy Soup. Welcome back to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Willow. Got Blake Murphy with me, and we have joining us on the line, Trey Kerby, No Dunks, who made his broadcast day. Is that your debut yesterday? I'm sorry, I wasn't familiar with your resume. Is that your debut?
That's a sort of a debut.
Okay.
We once upon a time got to call a summer league game. But this was a game with actual stakes that counted. Last year, we did some sideline reporting, but this felt like our big-time debut for sure.
For anyone who didn't see, Trey, Skeets, and Tass were the broadcast crew for the College Park Skyhawks game, the Atlanta Hawks affiliate who swept the 905 4-0 this year. Very nice of them. That organization is full of former Raptors people as well. Brian Schmidt, their head coach. You guys got a good one. Came down to the wire. Kobe Buffkin puts up 43 in that one, but it's CEBL legend Xavier Moon who gets it done for the Ontario Clippers. Man, how, like, obviously this seems like it would be a ton of fun to do. You guys do some prep and stuff, but like once you're late in a close game, what was that like? Like, were you just like autopilot and go with the flow? Were you in your head? How was that side of it?
It was really, really fun. And I don't know if autopilot is the right word, because the whole time I was just thinking, don't just yell, oh. Anytime something exciting happens, I wanted to at least have something to say, you know? But yeah, it was really, really fun. Gives us a lot of respect for the people who do this regularly. You start to understand why somebody on a broadcast might repeat themselves from time to time. There's a lot of time to fill during the game, but man, it was really fun. And I honestly didn't realize there was going to be so many Raptors connections with the Skyhawks there. You mentioned their coach, Ryan Schmidt, had time with the Raptors 905. I think he also coached a team in Canada called the Brampton Honey Badgers, an incredible name for a team. And then, like you said, Xavier Moon had a great game. Jamario Moon in attendance last night.
Wow. Did he do so a legendary summer league thing from the first couple summer leagues that I went to is Jamario Moon would show up in throwback jerseys to watch summer league games, but also was sometimes in a Jamario Moon jersey.
Really?
Was he jerseyed up yesterday? Did you get to see?
He seemed to be wearing standard civilian clothes, but he looked like he still had a free throw dunk in his legs.
Nice.
He had some H&M on instead of a 33 Jamario Moon. Damn, I should have gotten you my Jamario Moon jersey that I made at a summer camp one year. That's how much I love Jamario Moon, man.
Mikhail McIntosh and Josh Primo, also Canadians in that game, and Raptors legend Armani Brooks. And plus you guys obviously have the deep Toronto connection.
You guys are last on the list somehow. But.
Also, Dwayne Dedman? How did this not catch my radar that Dwayne Dedman is on the Clippers G League team? The G League's
interesting.
Every time you open a G League box score, there's fun stuff like this, Trey.
Yeah.
Dedman was hooping last night. I think he finished a plus 20. Still got the jumper from the top of the key. Still bringing the defense inside. He could give a team 4 or 5 minutes off the bench, I think.
All right. I got to ask you now that you're officially a broadcaster, there was an interesting call in the Denver Nuggets game last night where Aaron Gordon blocked Damian Lillard on a key shot late, and the color commentator called him Snuffleupagus because he snuffed that out. Where do we land on Snuffleupagus, Trey?
I guess I'd rather be called Snuffleupagus than Oscar the Grouch. But I was not expecting that listening to the broadcast. That was a hilarious broadcast. I watched quite a bit of Bucks Nuggets. They were showing the broadcasters on a little inset counting down Giannis's free throws. We had one color commentator counting 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, like that. And then we had another color commentator showing her iPhone running the stopwatch to the camera just to show that Scott Hastings was counting correctly. And I got to say, it paid off because late in the fourth quarter, Giannis Antetokounmpo actually got called for a 10-second free throw violation, and the crowd went insane.
That was actually jokes because, he got called for that violation. The next one, he just violated again. They didn't call it for the second time, even though he took exactly the same amount of time. But then Giannis missed a second free throw, but then ended up taking a pull-up 3 and made it. So it actually didn't even fully work out for the Nuggets, at least in that specific play, although they did get the win last night. But I don't know. I mean, honestly, the routine is absolutely a violation, and Giannis, I don't know what it is, but just needs to change the routine to make it legal. But do you actually want the refs to call that every single time until he changes it?
I kind of do, because once you see it called once, it's happening every time.
Because he did it on the next free throw. They literally have the
violations where I don't actually care about the infraction that much. Okay. I care about how that they just randomly call one once in a while.
Sure.
The free throw routine is also it's amusing. If I was watching an 82 Bucks game start to finish, I would lose my I don't know how Eric Name of The Athletic does it, watching it every single game, and I don't know, I guess you get a breather or whatever, but it's a tough one. Trey, where do you land on that?
Well, I don't want them calling it every time, but the reason they don't call it every time is because it happens every time. There was a game this season where Giannis took 34 free throws. So he's at the free throw line for 340 seconds. That's over 5 minutes of just waiting for a guy to take the shot. But they're only going to call it once a game, if that. So Giannis, not a ton of incentive to change it, but it seems like an easy fix. Just get into the dribble part 3 seconds earlier and you still got time.
Yeah, the annoying thing to me is the refs also give that respect as a great player, and they should, obviously, where he stands on the line, starts breathing, does a fake shot, then receives the ball. Mm-hmm. Then he goes for another 12 seconds. It's
how the pitchers have found loopholes with the pitch clock, where in baseball they introduce the pitch clock, but it doesn't start until the pitcher gets the ball back. Yeah. So you do a big walk around the mound and take your time, unless the umpire is really enforcing it. If they try to crack down on it further, Giannis is just gonna refuse to get to the free throw line, miss the pass from the ref. All right, let's pivot off of this to tonight. We're getting Raptors-Bulls, Trey, for the 4th time this season. We've talked to you about the Bulls a little bit earlier in the year. Not a lot has changed. Still kind of hanging around the play-in, dealing with some injury stuff. Not a bad team, but not a good team. We are 9 days out from the trade deadline. How are you feeling, man?
Well, I'm feeling okay. Not a bad team, not a good team. The Bulls are living for the play-in tournament. It seemed coming into the year like they were going to be a 9th seed. Got off to a terrible start, 5-14, but 17-11 since then. And guess what? They're right there for the 9th seed. So
that's where DeMar DeRozan shines.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You need a big market team in the play-in tournament, and you need stars like DeMar DeRozan to show up time and time again. Hopefully DeMar will let her skip school for game number 2, though, because I do think if that happens, maybe the Heat don't go to the finals.
Yeah, that was that part chased me as a Raptor fan, because I'm like, what do you mean? You're gonna let her do it for the 9-10 game but not the this? I guess this the second.
Tell your
play-in.
daughter to leave me alone.
Yeah, just
OG said.
Yeah, that was actually amazing. We got confirmation in game from OG on that. But no, I mean, I think because on one hand, you could look at the Bulls and say the start of the season and like where they are right now is kind of like their true talent level. Like you didn't really think that the Bulls would be that much over 500, and the fact that they're 3 games under right now is not the most surprising thing. But as you mentioned, it is kind of 2 segments. And
17-11 is not bad in the East.
they played really well. Obviously, a lot of that was without Zach on the floor, which may or may not be directly tied together. I think the most promising thing to come out of the Bulls season is Kobe White turning into, like, I don't even know. I mean, dare I say fringe all-star? Like, would he be a snub if Kobe? No, but, still, he's playing at a really effective level. But, I mean, I guess my question to you as someone who's, been a lifelong Bulls supporter or admirer, but, like, do you want them to blow it up? Because I think that was kind of the idea last time we had you on. Has 17-11 changed your mind?
It hasn't changed my mind, but I do prefer a competitive team. I like the Bulls having at least feeling like the Bulls are going to have a chance to win every single night out, even if they're not able to really beat the good teams right now. You go and look at their 17-11 stretch here. They're basically beating the teams they should and losing against the teams that they should lose against. So they're not really there, but I don't know. I'm sure Bulls management and Bulls fans themselves, our memories are long enough to remember the Bulls tanking prior to the 2021 season when they weren't very good and nothing really paid off. They got Lauri Markkanen. He ended up being a great pick, but he didn't become an all-star until he got to Utah, right? Chris Dunn, also a return in the Jimmy Butler deal. For whatever reason, he didn't get good until he got to Utah either. The Bulls struggled through 3 seasons, kept picking number 7, finally got a 4th pick, which hasn't totally panned out yet, but the results aren't always there when you tank. So, I mean, if they could find out a way to get the number 1 pick in 2025, that's a different story. But I think everybody's going for that right now.
I guess my takeaway here is the city of Chicago needs to be placed at altitude for the Bulls to really hit on their player. These guys go to Utah and suddenly everything clicks for Chris Dunn and Big Shotgun. Okay, so Trey, look, there's a case to be made if you're the Bulls front office, and I'm sure this is the case they'll make because they haven't pivoted off of this group for a while here that they've put together, that, hey, these guys are under contract, can't get good value for Zach LaVine. We're okay just keeping a really good player, and the contract's the contract, but he's a good player. Hey, Nikola Vucevic, it's only 2 more years. He's still a starting caliber center, and so on down the list. With DeMar DeRozan headed to unrestricted free agency this summer. Now, I don't know personally if DeMar's headed into the stage of his career where he might take a smaller deal to take on a different role on a contending team and try to get that ring. I don't know if he would prefer to stay with a team like the Bulls that has his bird rights and can pay him, what he's still worth. Does your thinking on the sell or stay part of this for the Bulls change at all with DeMar because he's a pending free agent? Like, do you treat him separately than the other guys in your head?
I think a little bit, just because DeRozan has been one of the biggest successes, I think, for Arturas Karnisovas as a GM since taking over with the Bulls. Not a highly regarded signing when they made the move in summer of 2021, I suppose, but he's played really well, was in the mix for some MVP votes that season, and has been an all-star a couple of times. He's definitely taken maybe a half step back this season. The efficiency isn't quite there. And the idea of letting him walk seems kind of ridiculous to me, but also the idea of paying him out longer and longer just because he's been such a solid vet. I don't know if that's the smartest team building move. For me, I think the deal would have to be right for DeRozan. If somebody's going to come in and offer a couple of first-round picks, which seems unlikely, I think the Bulls would have to at least entertain that idea. But if it turns out to be other expiring contracts and you're just trying to get DeRozan out of Chicago, I don't think the Bulls would have the stomach for that.
Well, if we go elsewhere, then Atlanta. See, there's other teams around like that. I feel like the Raptors aren't going to be the only team that blows it up essentially before the trade deadline here. There has to be another team that joins in here.
Yeah, the Raptors are the only team that blew it up before we got to the discussions about which teams should blow it up at the trade deadline. The Raptors, ruining holiday plans and stuff like that to get their work done. But yeah, there are some other teams in the Bulls-Raptors tier.
Yeah, well, Atlanta's I think firmly in that tier as well. And I don't know, when you look at them, you're like, well, there's clearly a lot of talent there. Like Trey's obviously very, very good player, even though I called him a weasel after the way he weaseled the Raptors out of that win on Sunday. But we'll just kind of continue in this discussion. Weasley. He is totally very Weasley, man. He runs Weasley. Like he's obviously amazing, at what he does offensively, especially. Jalen Johnson's breaking out in a big way. DeJounte Murray, I think, like makes some sense, I guess, but it just hasn't really fit in that kind of context. And they've changed coaches, and they're still, once again, another team that's like firmly in the play-in territory. I do wonder if they kind of like make that kind of decision and go younger, because they actually have like a decent-ish group to go younger towards if you want to get rid of some of the pieces around there. But Trey, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the Hawks should be doing at this juncture.
I think the Hawks are in a really tough spot because they just signed DeJounte Murray to a big extension. It hasn't even kicked in. Doesn't even kick in until next season.
And they already want him gone.
And they already want him gone. They also haven't started paying the Spurs back all the trade pieces that they made a couple of seasons ago. They owe the Spurs an unprotected first-round pick in 25. They've got a swap with the Spurs in 26, and then another unprotected pick going to San Antonio in 2027. That's a bad time to be bottoming out when you don't have any of your picks and they're going to a team that has a generational prospect who is getting better every single time he touches the floor. So the Hawks, I know, would prefer to keep Trae Young around. He's a marketable player. It was great to see him at the Skyhawks game last night, sitting courtside with his son. He's big time in Atlanta, and he does sell some tickets, and he's still a good player. I mean, like 27 points a game, amazing, nearly 12 assists, but outside of the 2021 run to the conference finals, the results haven't really been there. So I think they'll probably clearly want to move Murray at this point. The return hasn't been what they were expecting. The fit hasn't been as cohesive as they were hoping. So maybe getting a couple of players who could fit better around Trey and theoretically improve the defense would be the move. But it's going to come time when people start looking at blowing it up, which in Atlanta to me means actually trading Trae Young. I don't think they're at that point yet. They'll probably try everything else until then. But that's the way they could really get some draft capital back.
Well, this is I'm going to pivot off of Atlanta because I feel like we brought Trey in to just like blow up all the different teams that you have ties to. Hey, Chicago, get out of here. The Raptors, get out of here. The Hawks,
the Raptors
where you live now,
get
out of here. Yeah. I guess, although, if the Hawks did blow it up, maybe they'd promote the G League broadcast crew too. And we could get No Dunks doing Kobe Buffkin's first 30 piece at the NBA level. That'd be cool. The other team in this Eastern Conference kind of sub-play-in mess, Trey, is the Brooklyn Nets, who, fun story yesterday, Ben Simmons coming back, having a really nice game off the bench. But they're a team that's been pretty without direction as well. I think they thought they'd be better than this post Kevin Durant trade with another year of Mikal Bridges building and things like that. They are a couple games back of the Bulls. They're barely hanging on to the 10th spot in the play-in. What do you make of where they are directionally right now?
I think the Nets, at the very least, should be open for business at the trade deadline, whether that means Dorian Finney-Smith or Royce O'Neal. Maybe somebody's interested in Nick Claxton. But Brooklyn is in a similar situation that Atlanta is, because they owe picks to the Rockets for the first James Harden trade from way, way back. Now they've been able to recoup some of that with the Kevin Durant trade to Phoenix, with Harden then going to Philadelphia as well. The guy's moved around a lot, but his picks are still outstanding for Brooklyn. So they can't be terrible right now either, because they owe all of their best assets to other teams. So right now, I think that they would be wanting to get some additional first-round picks back, just like they have from Phoenix and Philadelphia, ones that are in the middle, which then you can maybe package and do something, put those together going forward and maybe get a really valuable pick. But I think this season for the Nets was kind of just seeing what they actually had, seeing how Mikal Bridges would do as a number one guy. I think he hasn't totally answered all those questions, considering the way he played last season. but he's a keeper at the very least. He's a keeper. Everybody else, though, I would be willing to explore trades.
Yeah, that's my question with the Nets is like, who else are the keepers with that group? Because like, I'm not saying the Nets have no purpose, like, but sometimes I watch them and just like, this is just like a random group of guys, like I don't feel that like they have a specific identity or something like, the Nets by them doing this. Even Atlanta to some degree, like I know them because that's
they run more pick and roll than anyone even in the modern NBA.
Exactly, right? So I feel like, Chicago's getting up there now too, but still like there are certain teams where I just feel like they don't even necessarily have like an identity. And I think that's the thing for Brooklyn is like, who do you actually move forward with in that group? Like
their identity is like the entire roster is guys you would package salary wise and moderately interesting wise to get a star because that's what they got as the return for James Harden and Kevin Durant. That's what's there. Like Cam Johnson, nice player, but 3 more years at full, like he's already getting paid. Mikal Bridges, really nice player with value, but like clearly not a number 1 guy at this point. Ben Simmons, fun story, but you're paying him $40 million next year. Like it's a tough spot to be in. So I'm with Trey. I think, your Dinwiddies, your Royce O'Neals, your DFSs, those guys should be very, very available. If they put Nick Claxton available, even though the Raptors shouldn't be in buyer mode right now, I may make a little call on that one too, because he's super interesting and still just 24. But yeah, I think pretty much nothing should be nailed down there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what would that call look like?
I don't know what that call would look like.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Maybe we could talk about it next week, leaving in the deadline. But the other tough part, if you're Brooklyn and like Trey, this is kind of, they could end up in a funny situation where like they trade all these picks away to get guys, then they trade them away, get all these picks back. All we hear is that like, yeah, Brooklyn would like to make a play for another star at some point. Like if you go after, I mean, the Cavs have been too good. They're never going to consider
Donovan
this,
Mitchell would have been
but when the
ideal.
Donovan Mitchell thing made some sense, it's like, okay, but like, is this enough? Like after you make the trade work and stuff, is there even enough here? I don't know. They seem to be, I don't know. I really don't know what to make of what they're doing there.
Yeah.
They're definitely scuffling, and it feels like we are perhaps in the future going to be looking at another picture of their free agent crop, and it's Johan Petro and Martell Webster all over again.
That's an infamous photo. How dare you leave out Jordan Farmar?
Yeah.
How could you?
we need to bring back the days of them photoshopping Carmelo into a starting lineup that includes Chris Humphries to try to get him to come to New Jersey.
People were using Photoshop 2.0 for those. And I mean, it's been a whole era. No, the whole East play is just hilarious right now because it's none of the guys are particularly happy. Maybe Orlando, I think, to some degree, but they had hit such a high level to start the year that the fact that they've dropped all the way down to 8th now and they're like 2-5 in the last 7 or something like that. Like the fact that they're in this group with Miami, who lost 7 in a row, Chicago, Brooklyn, Atlanta's right there, so they have the same record as Brooklyn right now, so they could obviously still slide into the play-in. It's like none of the teams really want to be in that play-in. Man. There's no point to the East play-in right now.
I really miss too delusional Nets fans trying to play the game like they're the Knicks and the Lakers. Like when HBAP was a thing. I don't know if you remember that, Trey, but like Humphreys, Brooks, and a pick, and Nets fans were just like sending that package out for every like borderline star in the league. Like even get us back to there where like at least we can chuckle at like the kid trying to sit at the adult table when it comes to big markets. We don't even get that right now.
Yeah, it's
no,
tough.
We don't. Maybe they'll be in the mix for Donovan Mitchell over the summer. We shall see. One of my favorite fake trades right now is Royce O'Neal somehow getting to the Milwaukee Bucks. Seems like he would fit there, and maybe you could get him for an early 2nd round pick.
The thing with that, I mean, we got to let you go after this, but the thing with that is apparently Royce O'Neal is like very good friends with Donovan Mitchell.
But he's a free agent, so you sign him back later anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, Trey, appreciate you for joining us on the show. We got to take another break. I've been your host, Willow. You've been listening to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network, brought to you by Campbell's new Chunky Spicy Soup. Welcome back to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Wim Lou, joined by co-host Blake Murphy, and we are joined on the line by Savanna Hamilton. Sav, what's good in Chicago right now?
Deep dish pizza is good, yo.
Oh, yeah? Is that why you only have 15 minutes? You got to dip to get some deep dish?
I have to go to the deep dish pizza spot. I know. I got to get it in before the game. No, I actually have yet to go get some. But,
Wow.
I mean, the weather's nice other than that.
Okay. All right. You're dipping for the weather. That's fine, too.
Yeah, it looks like you're getting sunlight there, which we haven't had in the city of Toronto since like mid-November, I think. Man. So good for you. I'm glad you're getting perks of being on the road, Sav. Sav, before we talk Raptor stuff, I got to ask. You shared a thing the other day on social media, and I know you do this a lot, but your sister is putting up numbers. Holy.
I know. Thank you for acknowledging. She's doing well overseas. Like she always has been, and I could brag about her all day long. But like seriously, like she has gotten all-stars, MVPs, and so it's no surprise to me that like she's now like I saw that stat. She's top 5 in Canadian female professional players overseas in rebounds. And she plays against WNBA players and everything. So I'm not surprised. And she's always been really good.
Not going to try to pronounce her Polish team's name, but if you want to fire up the old Eurobasket Polish scoring leaders and rebounding leaders, you'll see her.
Yeah.
Savanna Hamilton.
There you go. Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. I mean, Savannah's also her unofficial, maybe official agent too. So
yeah.
Honestly, though, like I'm her promoter, her agent, her marketer, everything. Yeah, brand manager, everything.
Yeah, get your cut.
I need someone, like there's that new trend now where when Woj and Shams tweet out anything that happens, it's like they tag like, oh, Mark Bartlestein of Priority Sports.
It's always Mark Bartlestein. He has every client somehow.
I get the tag.
You should get the tag. Yeah, you should literally get the tag.
Exactly.
Okay, for your full-time job, to cover the Raptors. Yeah, so what's the mood around like the team? So we just saw actually a video that came around where it was like Gary and Otto going shot for shot. They went like back and forth for like probably 10, 11 rounds. I'm not kidding. The clip's like a minute long. The whole team is just huddled up like watching this whole thing happen. And I won't spoil who finally missed, but it just looked like a really fun scene. And I feel like you would expect for the team to, obviously they're like 1-9 in the last 10, and they lost some games, they lost some teammates, but still seems like Darko has kept the mood high around the team. So I guess we're back to the start of the season. What are the vibes like?
You know what's funny is I was just talking to Jonte yesterday about that too, and he said considering the amount of like losses that they have taken this season, especially this past month, and for a variety of reasons, we can get into that later. Of course, you guys already touched on it. The mood is pretty high. I think it's just like hey, we're young, we just gotta learn, and we're gonna learn through trial and fire. And I think when they have that mentality adopted into it, they're not taking the losses as personal reflections of themselves and more as what can we get better on a tactical situation? What can we tackle today to get better for tomorrow? And I think that mental approach has kept the mood still at a bar that's, they're not happy about losing, but they're like okay with the process of getting better. So I think that's kind of been the vibe around the team. And that's kind of what Jonte was telling me yesterday as well.
With specifics, the tactics stuff that they can work on. We did hear Darko talk a little bit about, hey, we're back to box out drills. And I don't mean that derisively. Like there was a time.
They're actually working on boxing out.
During the championship season, Nick Nurse had the team doing box out drills too, because their defensive rebounding pre-trade, like when JV was out, I think had tanked so much with like Serge at center and then, Greg Monroe as the backup center. That's not Thad Young and Jonte Porter as your center.
I was going to say, that's way bigger than our current center rotation.
Yeah. So what did you make of that, Seb? Obviously, this team without Jakob Poeltl has really struggled to protect the rim, and then a game the other night swings on an offensive putback. Is that kind of priority one around the practices right now?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think you guys sounds like you guys listened to Coach talk yesterday as well, and he said that he even said we're probably the only NBA team that is practicing box out drills right now. And it kind of goes back to one of those things that I think, especially in the NBA, you get so high level, you're doing all these different defenses that sometimes the basics, the fundamentals of basketball can be overlooked at times. And so sometimes you just got to bring it back and remind guys like, hey, we got to box out. Like, it's a habit at the end of the day. Boxing out is an effort thing, but it's also a habit to know to look for your player or the man around you and put an arm at least on them. And then, if it's great if you can put a whole body in front of them, because that's the difference. Even if you just bump them, I think so. I could see why that was a point of emphasis. Jordan Nora, he did take the bullet. He said, I'll take the hit. That was me, in terms of that last possession in Atlanta being the difference between a win and a loss. But Coach Darko also emphasized that it wasn't just that last play alone. There's been several plays throughout the game where they were just giving up easy baskets just because they just weren't boxing out. So although you don't never want to say that it boils down to one play in particular, that was just the obvious one, right? And so I think that was probably one of the catalysts to working on boxing out at practice.
Yeah, I mean, he was not the only culprit. Like, first off,
20 offensive rebounds and like almost 80 points in the paint, whether it's box outs or just your assignments in general. Like, that was not all on Jordan Nwora on his like third day on the job.
Saddiq Bey also got 7 by himself, which is kind of absurd for a guy of his size. But, credit to him, and I get the Hawks for the win. I think, what this reminded me of is like the start of the season in training camp. There was so much talk that Darko went through about just going through basic passing drills. Like, you saw them run drills that Chris Boucher was describing in the podcast where it was like, nobody can dribble. Like, you're playing 5-on-5, but nobody could dribble.
Yeah, Naismith practice.
Yeah, just like literally taking it back to the fundamentals, which I feel like for this group, I mean, they're younger, they're developing. It is a totally different kind of perspective as compared to veteran groups. And Blake, I'm really happy you brought that up because even for veteran groups, that could be useful. You just don't do it as much. But I think in general, there's so much talk about evaluating the players, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about sort of how Darko's made his impression in his first year, right? This is his first time being an NBA head coach, and we knew he was big on player development. He came in with an idea to bring in a new offense, maybe simplified the defense. I think was probably the new approach as well. So, yeah, so how do you think Darko has done in terms of his first year bringing some of these new elements in?
I mean, it's been quite the first year for him. He's been given 2 different rosters. So
third one coming, maybe.
He's about to get another one.
Yeah.
Could be another one coming. We'll see. But I think that overall, it's really hard to judge a coach directly when there's been so much change in an organization. I feel like the first half of the season, like record-wise, and a lot of just familiar patterns of what we saw the previous season, despite the fact that they were still like great on ball movement. That's something that was very standout, like noticeable, but that clearly wasn't enough to, I guess, move the needle forward, I guess. And so that's kind of where he was at in the beginning of the season. Now I'm seeing, I kind of think I told you this, Will. I was like, I feel like the test starts when this roster has the adjustments made, because it was only a matter of time. Like, I think everybody saw the Pascal trade coming. Like, there's been like rumors since the summer. Masai even said, like, I think everybody saw it coming, basically.
Yeah.
So I think with that in mind, you're like, okay, am I coaching this team or will I be coaching another team in the future? So you got to kind of keep both in mind. So I always thought that was almost like not fair situation, because as a coach, you're professional, you could adjust to anything. But when it's like coaching a moving target. And so now that the target's starting to settle and there still could be another big change, as you guys just said, I feel like we could start to analyze how he's going to be developing this roster from now to the end of the season. Because I mean, and then he also said out yesterday at practice that there is no moral victories. However, they still want to win. But it's also hard to even say, like, okay, you want to win, but the team, you're practicing box out drills. Like, like you still need to go over some of the basics of basketball at this level, because the team is so young and has a long development process to go through. And so I feel like it's hard to make a final verdict of, like, is he a good coach or is he a bad coach? Like, no, he's a coach that's coaching a moving target right now. And he's doing the best to implement the consistency throughout the entire thing, which we actually have seen him do successfully with the assists. Like, they're on track right now to have an assist record in the NBA, like, historically. So
costing Darko a fortune for those children's hospitals.
Well, it's okay.
Yeah.
I think it's okay.
Yeah, we're good. Okay, Sav, so within all that, I think you're right about a lot of things there, and it can be tough to kind of parse through that after every single game, so what do you they come out tonight, they're going to play Chicago. Maybe we look ahead to next weekend when they're back off the road and it's post deadline and that's behind them. While Darko is saying there are no moral victories, they want to win, what are you looking at game to game right now? What is most important to you the rest of the season, if we're being realistic about, hey, even if they got in the play and they're not going to make a ton of noise there?
No, I like, even if they make it to the play-in, that's great. But because I think even getting a little bit of play-in experience or playoff-like experience goes a long way regardless. So that's still great. But what I personally look for on a game-to-game basis is just individual progress. Is this player playing more confidently? What's their decision-making like? I think we're seeing that the most with Grady right now. Yeah. His learning curve this past month has been just significant. And both I feel like his decisiveness, I feel like the game is slowly starting to slow down for him a little bit more now. We're seeing his 3-point shooting also become a bit more consistent. It's not always, but even last game he was 3 for 5, and he even talked about the fact that just came from knowing how to pick his spots better, read the defense, and find his spacing a little bit more, do the work before the shot. And so he's talking to me like in those terms now, rather than like, oh, I shoot with confidence. It's like it's a bit more specific in what they're looking for. And so I think that's encouraging. I think like players like that. And then we're still learning more about Jordan Nora. We're still learning more about Jonte, although we have a pretty good sample size of him now. And he's even telling me that he's learning so much himself at this level. Like he's still learning how to make adjustments on defensive rotations and cover the paint better, especially without Jakob being there. Now he's forced to be kind of the main guy in the center. So it's just such a learning curve. And I'm just kind of looking for the individual progress on a game-to-game basis and see how it comes together collectively. And I guess my last point for that would be Scottie Barnes. I'd like to see him just be a lot more assertive in the game earlier. So if I see that assertiveness come, anywhere outside of the fourth quarter, I see that as progress.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing that's the main reason people are tuning in right now, is to see this group and how these young guys grow. And I think in terms of just the nice adjustment to make, at least as a viewer, to me, is like, a lot of these games don't have the same pressure. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like dire in a way that like the bench comes in and they give up a lead, and the next day it's like, I can't believe the Raptors lost that game because in the fourth quarter, this unit didn't work, and this, like, we don't have those discussions anymore. All we really talk about is just like, how did this guy do as compared to yesterday? And I think for them, obviously for the players, I think this is like an easier environment to at least like get through some of those initial bumps, especially for a guy like Grady, right? Before it was like, if Grady comes in and he stinks and the Raptors blow a 10-point lead, then all of a sudden people feel bad about Grady. Now it's just like, all right, let's just see how it goes for him. He looks much more free in how he operates. Now, of course, you want to see more like competitiveness in general, but I mean, you see that in certain games. The one guy you didn't name in that list is Jordan Nwora, breakout star from the last game in Atlanta. Me and Blake were having a discussion about this in terms of just like what Jordan can be in this league. He has been in the league for a little bit as well, but your initial thoughts on Jordan since coming over to the Raptors? He finally got those minutes and he showed out.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of cool. Like, I feel like for me, I'm always like, I need a good sample size before I make any opinions. That goes for good and bad. So I would like to see that again from him. Like, if he can do it again tonight, okay, like I think we're looking at a real player. And I'm not saying he's not already, because he already has some traction in the league. And that actually wasn't even like his highest scoring game in the league. I believe his highest scoring game in the league was like 33 or 34 points before.
He set a Pacers record for points in a quarter, which is pretty impressive. They've had some good players.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Didn't Reggie Miller score like 30 points in a minute once at the end? That's the whole
no. Reggie Miller was that was like 12 points in like 30 seconds or something. I was crazy. Anyways.
Yeah, Nwora had 34 as a rookie with the Bucks.
Okay, that's impressive.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, he's showing sparks of, I guess, excellence in a sense, that he has it in him to like play at that level. Now for me, it's like, okay, let's see if he could do it consistently, because that's when I'll be like, okay, this guy's cool. Like, this is a good player. But for now, I'm just holding back my assessment until I see just more. That's all.
Got you. I'm the guy who, after the first date, my expectations are sky high. I'm like, yeah, this is it right here, Jordan Nwora. No, honestly, I think my what was so great about the Nwora performance was like, I haven't seen a Raptor give that good of a performance off the bench in quite a long time. Now, of course, that speaks to like Raptors haven't had a lot of depth, but seriously, when was the last time you saw a guy come off the bench and play that well for the Raptors? It's been a minute.
At least from a scoring perspective.
Yeah. By the way, that record he set with the Pacers is he tied it with Reggie Miller for most points in a quarter by a Pacer, 25 points.
25 points in a quarter.
Also against Atlanta, by the way. Maybe he's just an Atlanta merchant,
By the way, we got to throw out his 34-point career high as a rookie. I looked it up. It was the last game of the 72-game season.
Oh,
and
one of those
such
deals?
a meaningless game that Thanasis started.
No, man. Thanasis is a Game 82 specialist, man.
Mamadi Diakate also started. Sam Merrill and Jeff Teague. I wonder if he's ever talked about this one on the show.
Let him have his moment.
Yeah,
Let him have his record, Blake.
All right, my bad.
Stop going into the detail. He had 34 points. Okay?
I just clicked it. That's all.
He had no help with those 34 points, it seems like, too.
Yeah.
See? Boom. Even more impressive.
No, he was eating off Thanasis' plate. That's why he got traded. He got sent to Indiana after. No, I think my point is that the 33-point game where he had 25 and a quarter is his career best night, even if it wasn't a career high in points that night.
All right. Well,
he can shoot it, man. That's always going to get you chances in the league when you're 6'8", and you can hit a high 30s percentage of threes.
But like Savanna wisely said, you want to see it more for more than one game. So, we'll see what Jordan does tonight, for example. But Savanna, we got to let you go. I appreciate you. We will see you on the broadcast. And, I hope you got a walk-off interview. That's all.
We'll see. Listen,
it's been a minute. They only happen after wins.
Guys develop.
Oh, okay. Develop their walk-off interview skills. Love to see that too,
Yeah.
Actually, I will say this. One thing is that guys are very well spoken. They're very well spoken.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. Jonte is a big find in that regard. And then, he hasn't had an NBA moment yet, but Kyra Lewis was on the show with us yesterday and was fun as well. So another personality there, maybe for post-trade deadline for you, Sav.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Also, awesome. It's like nothing but Sportsnet games the next, we've got.
I like it.
I have so many TV dates, like pregame TV dates coming up. Yeah. Like, man, we got every game.
They even got me tonight. Catch me on the pregame with Danielle Michaud from the program.
Love that for you guys.
All right, Savanna, we'll let you go.
See you, Sav. Enjoy the deep dish.
Yeah, I appreciate you. See ya.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we do have to see more than one game of Jordan Nwora. I'm not gonna lie though, I've rewatched his performance specifically twice already from Atlanta.
So I feel of two minds about this because I agree with what Sav is saying, and it's a new situation, and you want to see more from a guy than just one good outburst. I actually kind of feel, and this is like people who know me know it's rare for me to like hand wave away like a good young player coming through in a bench role. Like I love the player development stuff.
But this is your lane, yeah.
We have 4 years of Jordan Nwora playing rotation minutes on good teams with good teammates around him and stuff. Like, I'm going to need to see a lot of Jordan Nwora doing what he did the other night before I take that over the much larger sample we have of him, where like Indiana's crafting out play designs for him to get into his bag. Milwaukee, he's getting every open shot you can imagine, playing or spacing around Giannis, and with how many top threes that system generated and stuff. So I'm not saying that, there's nothing there. Again, he's 6'8" and can shoot.
He can definitely catch and shoot.
And has 4 years in the league as, a fringe rotation player on good teams. Like that's good information. He's an NBA player, but the 24 points, the some self-creation, the 6 assists, I'm going to need to see a little bit more of that before I'm like, okay, something's clicked for him versus, and maybe it does because some guys like Milwaukee is a very structured offense when he was there. Indiana, despite the free-flowing nature of Tyrese's game, is it, like we've heard Bruce Brown talk about it too, it's a pretty structured offense in terms of where you get your stuff. So maybe the little bit of extra freedom he'll have here helps something click. I'm just going to need to see a little bit more of it because we do have, a lot of, like he's played 3,000 NBA minutes. We have an idea of Jordan Nwora coming into this.
No, I mean, I think
he's older than Gary.
The question I gave to you was, has Jordan Nwora, or is there a potential for Jordan Nwora to be like a cheaper version of Gary in Gary's role, right? And I think for me, it really just depends on obviously how well he catches and shoots. That's probably the one like main skill he's brought wherever he's gone.
Yeah, and he can sit around 40% with that. Like if he took out the pull up threes that Indiana was happy to let him take in,
he's been like a low 30s pull-up three guy, even going back to college, which is kind of interesting because he is a guy who is pretty good at catch and shoots. I think part of that is also just the release is quite low.
Yeah.
But even aside from that, like he can shoot. He's got the tools to play defense. That's what Darko said he's got all the tools to play defense, but he wants to challenge him to get better on that end. Like, I don't know, man. There's maybe a 3-and-D kind of guy there in the future. So.
Yeah, I think there's an NBA place for Jordan Nwora. I think that's like you don't play 3,000 minutes on good teams and not have some NBA skills that are worth. And it's not like he was a lottery pick that teams just kept giving chances. He was a second round pick who played his way into this. Like there's a guy there. I just like
kind of like Gary in a way.
Yeah, similar. Yeah, to Gary. And I think,
but Gary was super young when he came in.
Yeah,
and Jordan is an older prospect.
Yeah,
he's older
25
than Gary
years old, and I don't want to write that off. Lots of guys get better into their mid and late 20s. I would just worry a little bit about framing it as Wara or Gary when there are also a lot of other players out there in the NBA. And it's the thing that is tough sometimes with evaluating Gary Trent over his years in Toronto and now with Wara is when you are a team that has so little shooting, anyone who can shoot feels like good. It feels like an oxygen mask, right? For the offense to have a guy come in but if your roster was structured with like more shooting available, like maybe you don't even notice a Jordan Wara impact. Obviously you notice a 24.
Well, that's what happened with like Indiana, for example. Like, and also Indiana did, like, to be fair to him, they did sign, Obi Toppin, who took away some of his minutes on the wing. Bruce Brown, who took away a lot of his minutes on the wing. So like it is also a situation where he was a bit of an odd man out.
Poor Jordan Wara probably saw the news. He's like, oh, Bruce Brown's trade. I'm going to get some minutes. He's like, I'm going with him.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens after the trade deadline. But
it's a little interesting to talk about him in terms of like, well, his minutes versus Bruce Brown versus Gary Trent, because like he's 6'8". He has a power forward body. He looks like a power forward. He moves like a power forward, but he really does have kind of like a 3/2 skill set.
Right. Which is kind of interesting in some regard. I actually would have preferred a Noir type for the Raptors in their previous iteration when they were Vision 6'9".
Yeah.
Just another big guy who
can shoot, right?
Exactly.
And like you look at what hasn't worked out for McDaniels in Toronto, and part of that is part of it is he just hasn't been nearly as good as he was in Philadelphia or Charlotte. Maybe because you're playing off LaMelo and Joel Embiid, maybe just because you're just not comfortable here or whatever, but like the shots haven't dropped when he's gotten the opportunity. So
the other question I had in here about NDP, Nor Dick Porter, is about Grady Dick. And he is looking better.
You keep singing this NDP line.
I'm trying to push. There's different versions of this. There's also DNP, when they get pushed down the rotation and they did not play.
That's cruel, man.
There's also PND, the Party Next Door, for the Toronto connection. I don't see how that specifically connects to these three individuals, but, maybe they need a break from Toronto when they go to the 905.
You'd be like Party Next Year, yeah. So they're the future party. I don't know. It's not good either way.
Yeah, I don't know. NDP is probably the best one here, I think. But with Grady, there's obviously he's playing more confidently. Sad talked about that. I think I want to see Grady, because this came up because he had the conversation with Kyle Korver before the game, and that Savanna reported on that as well, which was great. I'll love to hear that perspective on just like how he's going to learn from a guy like Kyle. And they said that they talked at the time of the draft. Blah blah blah. Can you give me one non-white comp for Grady Dick, please? The way he plays, you know what I mean? Because I'm tired. It's like Duncan Robinson. It's Kyle Korver. I at some point I even heard Tyler Hero, and I'm like, he does not play like Tyler Hero at all to me. Like, sorry.
Quickly off the top of my head, and this would be like 100th percentile outcome. Like Buddy Hield is the model of like to do a non-white comp of like someone who's very heavily movement shooting based, has a little bit of passing, but it's all passing that's created by their gravity and the way defenses respond to them offensively. Maybe this is just watching a lot of Pacers lately.
I hear you, man. I love watching the Pacers.
Every time I look at Buddy Hield's stat line, I'm like, he's only averaging 12 points. And I'm like, oh yeah, but he like never misses.
Dude, but he's a moving threat at all times.
Exactly.
Like, one of the Pacers' best plays is just Buddy Hield runs over and fakes screens and just taps a guy on like literally the hip and then runs
Gary
past him.
do it all the time, the ghost screen, but it's Buddy Hield instead, who's like a career 40% 3-point shooter. I mean that's kind of, and they're not like similar. Like Buddy's a guard.
I feel
Grady's got 4 inches on him.
Grady plays with more athleticism in a weird way, even though I feel like Buddy's more athletic. Grady, the funniest thing watching Grady right now for me is every time he jumps to 100% capacity. Like, no matter what, like just a regular rebound, this guy's jumping to his max vert each time. He's playing like so all out that I feel like even if his athleticism isn't as much as someone like Buddy Hield, he's using it as any opportunity he can.
Yeah. But anyway, off the top of my head, that kind of like everything you do is about the gravity you create and your movement off the ball. That's kind of, the arch. But like, again, Grady's not the same guy. He's bigger, which, you're going to use him differently and use him in different situations. I kind of think that's why people do the Duncan Robinson thing a lot, because it's like, oh, a tall guy can get his shot off differently than like Redick or whatever. Like the Redick comps are like ridiculous because like there's like 7 inches of difference there. And JJ Redick had to become like the league's best conditioned athlete and learn that little hit ahead dribble. Anyway, we don't need to do only white comps, is I think your point here.
I mean, it's not even my point is just like, well, I just need one good comp for him. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, even for propaganda purposes.
Yeah.
That's all. Yeah.
Gotta the thing.
Can't even give him like cross like continental. Like, what if you gave him like a pager? You know what I mean? Like, at least it's not.
Okay, so you said non-white, but you just mean like non-American.
No, I mean like, come on, man. People will be like, yeah, he's a Sam Hauser type. I'm like, what type is that, man?
Yeah.
Just tell me what you really mean. But
yeah, Sam Hauser is not a guy who is a type. Man. Okay, I got one last thing on. I mean, we'll do Bulls Raptors preview in the final segment, but there's no way he's listening. But I did want to say this game's in Chicago tonight. Happy 70th birthday to Chuck Swirsky.
That's right. First off, I did not know he was 70. He does not look 70.
Man,
he looks the exact same as when he was in Toronto. This is not me casting him. I saw him like 2 weeks ago when he was here with the Bulls. Yeah.
Sports radio, very good to age you slowly because you just have to sit around and watch sports. Talk to people online.
Oh, that's what they say about sportscasters for sure, is that we age gracefully. That's definitely what happens when you eat the.
That's us. Poor Samson on the show yesterday getting flamed in the YouTube comments about lying about his age because he's bald.
What was the joke? I saw one comment that was like, "There's no way you're 21." I mean, Samson's clear is not 21.
He made a joke about being 21 one time, and then like people have ran with it. And anyway, it's all very amusing. Let's take a break before this goes off the rails any further.
That's what happens. Savannah dropped the call, and then we just became unserious. It was great.
Yeah, I'm thinking about deep dish pizza now.
You know what? Deep dish pizza? Kind of overrated. That's another spicy take.
Overrated a little bit.
Why am I eating a pie?
Overrated a little bit it's more like a casserole, right? Like it's
that's. No, but like, what are you supposed to do with all that crust, man? It's all dry and stuff. You have dipping sauce.
So I will say, like at the chain level, absolutely agree. If you go to like a good sit-down pizza spot in Chicago, though, you can find spots where you get it.
But I did. I went to like Lou Minolti's or whatever. It's like one of the original classic spots. Shouts to Josh Hart.
Yeah.
That was his bachelor party, and so we all went to this place and it was proper and everything like that. And I was eating it and I'm like,
it's definitely a no for me.
That's a lot of crust, man. That's a lot of crust.
You're not gonna feel good after.
No, I don't even care about the feeling good. I just felt like the ratios were off, man. Like I guess I prefer the opposite.
It's not my favorite style of pizza either, but
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to take this break because we've run out of topics. I've been your host, Willow. You've been listening to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network, brought to you by Campbell's new Chunky Spicy Soup. Welcome back to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Lou. I'm joined by co-host Blake Murphy. During the break, I also challenged myself to find a Grady Dick comp that wasn't white and struggled with it, at least in the league right now. So message me. I'm just opening this up to people. All right, the rules are they just can't be all-American white. That's all. Just give me one comp for Grady that is, not that.
Yeah, I mean, it's
because I'm looking for a movement, 3-point shooting, a little bit of playmaking.
Anyway, but
yeah, I hear you. You're right, and a little bit of athleticism.
Yeah, also got to be pretty bad defensively to make it work.
Yeah, okay, it's a difficult challenge.
There just aren't a lot of guys like that.
There just aren't a lot of guys like that.
Which is how when one comes along, he gets picked in the lottery.
Yeah. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to go around the NBA, and I wanted to start with the New York Knicks, who are just awesome to watch. Like, honestly, probably the most fun team to watch right now in the league, which is, I never thought I'd say that about the Knicks, especially Tom Thibodeau's Knicks, but 13-2.
Taj Gibson's back.
Taj Gibson is back with exclamation mark. Mark Bartle's team put in the extra payment to Woj for that one. 13-2 record since January 1st. They're honestly, they got to be. Where are those side talk videos? Because I feel like they should be doing way more of those. 13-2.
My guess is that it's Knicks fans, so they're probably not thinking about these things rationally. But like, they got real excited and then like it didn't happen. I wonder if you temper that a little bit. Like,
I don't know.
Like,
man.
Raptors fans at the end of 2018 weren't talking the way they were talking at the end of 2016. You know what I mean?
I don't think the Knicks fans got humbled in any degree. I don't think they need to be.
I don't think they could. Yeah.
Yeah. That was after a opening night win, by the way, last season. Which is the best part. They beat the Celtics, I think. Yeah. And then they were immediately being like, Kevin Durant, don't you wish you came to the Knicks?
Yeah.
I love those guys.
I mean, in retrospect,
Honestly,
maybe he does.
They kind of had a point, but don't worry, they got OG now.
Yeah, I mean, look, OG didn't even play last night, so they lost Julius Randle. They're saying it's a matter of weeks, not months, with a dislocated shoulder. That can be obviously finicky.
Yeah.
Randle plays a physical style, so he's going to have to be 1,000% sure that he's feeling good. And then OG.
Oh, by the way, you said on yesterday's show that you've also dislocated your shoulder before. How'd you dislocate your shoulder?
Playing hockey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this one, it still clicks if I go like this, like the tendon still catches sometimes. It's fine.
All right.
Yeah. Don't hit people from behind. Is what I would like to request.
Oh, this is like
people.
Oh, you were hit from behind. Okay,
Yeah. I'm not hitting anyone. From
okay.
behind.
I was like, damn, I didn't know I was co-hosting with Taco
I'll
Tuesday.
hit you right to your face. I don't need to.
Okay.
No Bertuzzi. I'm more the Kipper type. It's like I'll let you know it's coming.
Got you.
Yeah. No, I'm 5'10". There's a reason that I didn't make junior in the end.
Oh, okay.
Look, so the Knicks played yesterday without Julius Randle. They played without OG, who was dealing with elbow soreness.
Right.
So they started, and they're without Mitchell Robinson, which should be so. They're starting Isaiah Hartenstein, Josh Hart, Precious Achua in that game, and it was the Hornets, so who cares? I guess. No, but they like boat raced the Hornets, like they crushed them. And this is a Hornets team that I understand they just traded away Terry Rozier, but like Terry Rozier, man, like
I know.
Like this is a Hornets team that
they're still an NBA team. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they still an NBA
team. They played
team.
the Raptors a certain way.
They did beat the Raptors earlier this year, which is not even the worst loss of the year. The Knicks went 17 for 21 in the third quarter for 44 points.
Yeah.
Just how good are the Knicks? Because like 13-2 is like contender level good since the trade, but like, and when you look at the roster, it's not a team that you would say is like, okay, I'm going to pencil this team to go to the conference finals, for example, but they're just rolling. They're crushing teams. Like the Denver Nuggets go in their building and they destroy them. The Minnesota Timberwolves go in there and they beat them. Like the Raptors go in there and they beat them.
On the season, they're up to 5th in net rating in the entire season. So this is like, obviously it's inflated by the last little bit, but they're good, man. They were good before, which is why this trade made sense, where you can trade two guys for one and maybe not even long-term get the best player in the deal. And it's still a huge win for you. So look, they had to juggle Jericho Sims, Isaiah Hartenstein, and Precious Achua across two big man spots yesterday, and then play small with Josh Hart at the 4 the rest of the time. Like, this is a team cobbling it together and still looking that good. You get Julius Randle back eventually. It doesn't sound like it's the type of injury that you have to overreact to in trade.
Okay.
OG's sounds day to day. But even when this team was cooking, I think a lot of people looked at it and said, they're still a bench guy short. And they need, a little, they feel the Emmanuel Quickley loss.
Yeah, they do.
Or if not the Emmanuel Quickley loss directly, the fact that they could bring RJ out of the starting lineup and have him lead the second unit in a way that you can't really do with OG Anunoby. You could stagger Randle and Brunson, but they probably need one more bench piece. They're in really good shape to add one, though, because they have Evan Fournier's basically dead contract. They have a lot of picks. They didn't have to. They gave up 1 second in the Raptors trade. They have the assets to do it. Now, we've heard forever that the Knicks don't want to blow too many of their assets because they always want to be in the mix for a star. What I would say is, if Randle gets back healthy in time and they could turn Fournier in a first into like a really solid bench piece, they have a case to be maybe like no one's on the level of Boston as a regular season team, but I do think the Knicks were like pre-Randle injury one piece away from being in the tier with Philly and Milwaukee, at least as a regular season team.
Yeah.
They're good, man, and they're tough.
They're
and they're
so
hard
tough.
to play
That's
against
the thing,
because like you can turn the tap off on Randle or Brunson, but like it's really hard to do both. And I mean, Thibodeau's teams are just, they play smart and tough and physical. They don't give you anything in terms of extra possessions. Yeah. They're good, man.
My only thing with them is like most Tom Thibodeau teams, I feel like they probably won't have another gear to flip to in the playoffs because they're already playing that hard and that prepared in the regular season. But still,
Dante DiVincenzo 42 minutes,
dude,
man.
every time he comes in the game, he's playing great defense and banging a bunch of threes. Like
he took 15 3-point attempts last night.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want against the Hornets, man.
Yeah.
No, the Knicks. I regret to report that the Knicks are actually really fun to watch.
By the way, a hilarious sub thing in this game.
What's up?
They lost Julius Randle in a game where like you could justify having him on the court still, but like they were up big with like 4 minutes left when he got hurt.
Yeah, I mean,
last night, a thinned out Knicks team is up by 20 plus against the Hornets. They didn't put their bench pieces in until like a minute and a half left in the game.
Yeah, I mean,
Tibbs is gonna Tibbs, man.
He's got a brand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is his thing.
I'm trying to see Charlie Brown Jr., Malachi Flynn, and Ryan Archie Diacono.
Yeah,
that's the real DNP. I don't care what the initials are.
That's crazy. That's a DMP because they don't need to play.
So if we assume Randall's back, and like the OG thing only sounds like day to day, it doesn't sound like anyone's too worried. Let's assume Randall gets back by the playoffs enough to be healthy. What type of guy, or what guy specifically, do you think suits the Knicks?
I mean, ideally, you want somebody with a little bit more size, because I do feel like overall they're a bit undersized. The thing is, all their shorter guys are all play bigger than their height.
Yeah.
That's the thing I love about the Knicks. Brunson is going to take charges all over the place. Josh Hart is the most physically imposing 6'4" guy you've seen. Like, he reminds me of like almost like a younger PJ Tucker in the way where he's like getting every rebound, but he also has more of an offensive package. He's pushing the break.
It's funny, like
this guy would give triple doubles and stuff. It was just like ridiculous for a guy who's his role and his size.
The idea of Josh Hart now has to start because Randall's out, so they go out and get Bruce Brown to be the Josh Hart replacement as another like 6'4" guy who plays like he's 6'9".
Yeah, but I think ideally they get one more wing with some size who can also play some offense. But if short of that, which is pretty difficult to do with just one first round pick, like. Yeah, I mean, go get yourself, like, I like your idea of, like, can you get a Clarkson into this roster? You know what I mean? Like, just somebody who can get their own offense a little bit for the second unit. The thing is, like, those type of players generally struggle in the playoffs, I feel like.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I'm just, like, too scarred from, like, Lou Williams going from, like, 6-man, like, Lou Will to, like, oh, wow, like, he's not going to be playable in this Wizards series as the Raptors get swept. Like, that style of player, even quickly had the same struggles with them last year where some of it was also injuries, but, like, he couldn't play the same game he did in the regular season in the playoffs in that kind of role. So, you know, maybe, but I mean, Clarkson is also like a tier above some of those guys. Like, he's also really, really good. So
yeah, the Jazz are like, if the Jazz were a couple games worse, they have a couple of cool guys like that. Like Colin Sexton is better than like get him as a bench piece, but he's got 2 more years really affordably on his deal. Like he'd be a really nice sixth man piece for someone to pick up, or even fifth starter. I don't know that they'll, and this isn't a fit for the Knicks, but like Kelly Olynyk should be in a playoff game. Like he's an expiring contract who I think someone would want, but I could also see why the Jazz would keep him because they're in this kind of in between.
I actually don't mind him potentially as a Knicks candidate. I mean, I know he's not like the two types of players I'm describing here, but I mean, the Knicks are good, and they have the potential to get more. On the opposite side of the spectrum, the Heat are terrible these days.
Yeah.
Lost 7 in a row. They're 0-4 since the Kyle Lowry trade. That's what you get.
Oh, actually, sorry, one last thing. Brogdon would be really nice.
Oh, Brogdon would be
even
sick.
though he's you know, again, another guard. So you get the offense, but you don't get the size. But you do get a little bit more switchability with him too. So,
sure. Yeah.
I wonder if you could get him for Fournier and just a first.
I mean, they have so many firsts. Just throw in the second one. Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, not who cares, but like still. I would try to invest in this group. This is like the best moment I've seen from the Knicks in probably quite some while. The Heat are terrible.
Heat down bad.
Lost 7 in a row. In those 7 games, the Heat are the worst offense in the league by a full 2 points per game.
All right.
Jimmy Butler's only taking 12 shots per game in this stretch too, which, you know, he has come back from injury and it has somehow made them a little bit worse. They're losing by an average of 16 points a game. They got watched again last night. Yeah, just why are they so bad? And also, is this another, you know, rope and dope by the Heat? Because I'm also like, I never can rule out the Heat just because of that.
So I don't think it's a full rope a dope.
Okay.
Because look, there's some to what you're saying, right? Like Jimmy Butler has another gear in the playoffs. Bam Adebayo, for whatever reason, just is bad in January and February every year. I don't really understand. Maybe that heat conditioning program just like works at the start and the end. And like, look, I think people who have known my stuff for a while, even though this trade is fine, I'm not a big Terry Rozier guy. Like I didn't love that move as the use of Kyle Lowry's contract and a first round pick, even if I understand why. I just don't. It's tough. Like Duncan Robinson has really come back down to earth after having such a great start to the season. Jaime Jaquez, I mean, maybe I'm over indexing to last night. He was really bad last night.
Yeah.
In that Suns game. Like this is a team that is still like relying on Kevin Love for rotation minutes.
Right.
They just like, it's so hard when you are constantly doing the thing where, and you have to do this if you're the Miami Heat, you're going to sustain for a long time. But like, and we joked about it at the start of the season, like you let Gabe Vincent go, you let Max Strus go, and like you
Max
just
had a nice season,
and you just find the next one. But that's really hard to do year over year. So like, if you know they got Jaquez, but like Jovic doesn't look like a guy that they trust. None of the Drew Smith types have really clicked for them this year. Haywood Highsmith is nice defensively, but like it's tough to play him and another non-offensive player just because of what it does for your spacing and stuff. So it's tough. It's It's tough. And apparently, okay, so Amit just sent us something. Bam said there was a film session today with candid communication among everyone in which the players were vulnerable with each other and they now have clarity. An intense, resolute SPO said nothing discussed was any of the media's business. That was per Barry Jackson after Heat practice today.
That group therapy?
Yeah.
Nice.
Basically, air it out.
That's cool. I like that. Honestly, that's a big part of every team is like you got to be able to talk openly and honestly with people. And sometimes that results in like difficult emotions jumping out and like little clashes. But I mean, you remember one of the big turnarounds for the Heat or one of the more seminal moments was like Jimmy Butler going at Spo and UDB on the sideline and essentially like kind of I don't know. It's so much of this is like Heat propaganda or like Heat culture or whatever. But I do believe that to a certain degree.
I mean,
like
Heat culture is not that you'll never have problems. It's that if you have a moment like this, like you can survive it.
Exactly.
As well. There's still that level of trust. I don't know. I have a little trouble figuring out how I actually feel about the Heat because
dude,
I feel very differently about Kyle Lowry than I do about Terry Rozier. So
okay,
I kind of almost I don't want the trade to not work because the Heat are interesting and stuff, but like it wouldn't kill me if the trade kind of backfired.
No, it totally wouldn't too. I mean, I would love to see the Heat just like, not make it in the playoffs and do their whole thing because it feels like they're set up once again to like win the play-in tournament, then upset somebody and then just like ruin it and then not win the championship, which is like kind of their go-to move at this point. I think the other thing too is just it's hard to bet with the Heat because so much of it feels like smoke and mirrors in a way. Like they're the ultimate smoke and mirrors.
They've done it to us so many times, man.
Yeah.
It's like I don't really know what to make of it. It's like, okay, well, they just keep doing it. So I guess you trust it until they show they can't do it anymore. I don't know.
I mean, they know that their offense needs help. That's that's why they've been trying to get like scoring guards, which is going to be so, important to just making any offense work really, especially nowadays. But
this doesn't control for pace. So it's just points per game. But do you know who the Heat score better than on a points per game basis in the Eastern Conference?
Who?
The Charlotte Hornets, and that is it.
Ah, man. Wow. Yeah, I mean, look, listen, I don't think Kyle was helping with that. That's the thing. Kyle was watched in terms of him scoring the ball. He's still going to find other little gaps, but I don't know. Rozier has not like hit the ground running by any means. He was 3 of 11, 3 of 10, 4 of 12, 8 of 14. But I mean, the other thing too is I just feel like they don't give the ball to Jimmy or Jimmy doesn't take over. Like Jimmy might have like the veteran version of like the thing that we complain about Scottie. I was like, just take over a little earlier.
Which is really
he takes 12 shots a game in this stretch. Man.
I know.
There's no way that if you're the worst offense in the league and you're Miami, that Jimmy only taking 12 shots.
Tell you
it's ridiculous.
This, though, if Scottie is going to secretly, until we find out in a year or two, like have that. Oh, also I have another level in the playoffs that I'll bring every year. I'm all for it. Let him be Jimmy Butler in the regular season if he's going to be Jimmy Butler.
I would
in the
love
playoffs.
for that to be a progressive, like a trajectory that he'd be on.
I looked up not that long ago when we were talking about Scottie's usage and it had settled in just a little below 25% with Pascal. Mm-hmm. And this is like, I think when the first All-Star voting came out and I was looking like, okay, how many guys make All-Star, being a lower usage number one? How many guys make All-NBA being a lower usage number one? And it's about like 15% of all NBA guys can come in at like 25% usage or lower. And a lot of those are like the center, like a Rudy Gobert type center. Sure. But the one example that kept coming up of a guy who has like 25 to like 24 to 26% usage and is always in the all NBA conversation is Jimmy Butler.
Yeah.
Obviously very different players stylistically, but it does show you that you can come about being an all NBA level player without being a superstar level usage guy.
Sure. But that's the thing I was saying with Scottie to start the program was just like, if he gets that one go-to move that's really rehearsed that he can go to all the time, that defenses will always have to take away from him. Otherwise, he's scoring with that no matter what. Like kind of what Jimmy has right now with the mid-range jumper, like that he's like really, I mean, I don't need to explain Jimmy Butler's game, but like, yeah, Scottie with that level of mid-range would be like an absolutely devastating player in addition to what he's already currently doing because he already does so many things so well. And it's just like you add that one go-to scoring move as well, just it just levels you up,
It does. So maybe we'll see it from Scottie tonight. We know DeMar has that go-to move. It's a pump fake move. So it's time now for Between the Lines, brought to you by Bet Rivers. Yeah. Take a chance. The Raptors are 6.5-point dogs. The over-under set at 227. Injury updates. RJ Barrett remains out.
Okay.
Daniel Quickly is doubtful. Jakob Poeltl is questionable. So maybe we get Jakob Poeltl back tonight. On the Bulls side, Zach LaVine, Patrick Williams, Torrey Craig, and of course Lonzo Ball still out.
I forgot about him.
Yeah. So some interesting ones here because these teams have seen each other 3 times. There was obviously the comically bad game to start the season. A pretty interesting good then bad game a couple weeks ago where, again, they played a lot of small against the Bulls. We saw Scottie all over the place defensively, DeMar, Vucevic, whatever. What are you looking for matchup-wise in this one?
I think the guy who's giving the Raptors a ton of problems in this matchup is Vucevic.
Yeah.
I think if Jakob's in, that's going to help a ton because I think they were really struggling to cope with Chicago's size. They were getting to the glass. Vucevic, down there, but also even Drummond, for example. I think, weirdly enough, small ball, I think probably is the Raptors' best strategy against the Bulls when they put out, Vucevic. I think they can go smaller with Scottie at 5 for stretches, and I think they're going to get, some good results out of that. Probably not as much if you put like that at small ball 5, for example, but yeah, I mean, I just want to see how they handle that, how they adjust and play it. I mean, it's interesting too. It's a bit of a chess match because Darko obviously was one of the the head assistants behind Billy Donovan back when they were in OKC, and so I'm sure he would want to get a win over these guys. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just a matter of when to play small ball against these guys because I do feel like the Raptors will settle in on that look for them. You're probably going to need like a big game, for example, from like a Chris Boucher if he gets into the rotation. I thought Chris did well against Chicago the last game, and you probably need somebody flying around and just helping over and rotating a little bit. We haven't seen that from Chris. He's kind of been like up and down a lot, just like his minutes have been. But it'll always be interesting. I don't think we have a natural like who's going to guard DeMar for us.
Yeah, I was going to ask you this, and I think the answer is Scottie.
We're going to have him play DeMar and also play small ball 5 at times?
I mean, yeah.
It's a big ask.
Like, I'm talking like out of the gate. Who's he guard? Because the Bulls are right now with Levine and Patrick Williams and Torrey Craig all out. They start basically 3 guards, DeMar and Vucevic. Like, Ayo Dosunmu started last game along with Caruso and Kobe White. So they're small.
Yeah.
And like the Raptors are kind of small right now too. So I could see Scottie and DeMar just like lining up as the 4s. I'm more curious what they do with the Scottie matchup because like you don't want DeMar guarding Scottie really.
They'll probably throw Caruso at it again.
Probably.
Yeah. Maybe some double teams. I mean, that's the thing. Like Scottie's getting to see like the top tier defenders and also double teams.
And like if you don't have RJ and Quickly, why wouldn't you?
No, absolutely.
Double the heck out
of him. I'd be like,
oh,
Jordan Moore had one 26-point game. Cool. Let me see him do it again. And if he does it again, we'll adjust, right?
It's a game where, like, this has been the case for pretty much every game, but I would much prefer to watch this game where Scottie has Jakob Poeltl as a weapon to, get some space, to get that Vooch switch if Caruso's giving him trouble, to have a backline defender so he doesn't have to guard Vooch and can maybe guard DeMar a little bit more. I miss Jakob Poeltl, man.
No, I mean, I think they're like 1-9 without Yak in the lineup. So it's tough. It's been tough. I think the other thing to me too is just like, how do we keep Kobe White quiet? Because sometimes he'll kill you with like making 5 threes, 6 threes. He's that type of player who can really get hot. But last game, he also got downhill against the Raptors over and over again. And I don't know, man. It's going to be Dennis, hopefully the best case scenario is Dennis does a really good job against Kobe White. The Raptors win, and then we call Dennis tomorrow.
I was going to say, is Dennis on the show tomorrow? Because I'll tell you right now. Okay, so that was Between the Lines, brought to you by Bet Rivers. Take a chance. I believe you also wanted to shout out Casey McKay and Easter Seals Ontario today as well.
Yes, I did. Just wanted to pull it up earlier because we just dropped the link? Oh no, we didn't. We have the link here.
Yeah. So this is Casey's 24th year participating in the Maple Leaf Skate, which is to help fund Easter Seals Ontario. It's a fundraiser. I've donated to Casey in the past. Huge Toronto sports fan who interacts with a lot of us on Twitter.
Yeah,
I wanted to give Casey a shout out and point people to that.
No, thank you for pointing this out because I did leave this at the top of the rundown to make sure we had this for this week. But yeah, go support Casey. Go look up at Easter Seals Ontario and just help support the cause. But I appreciate you, Casey, for reaching out to us, and YouTube, Blake, for bringing that up. Okay, that does it for us today. I've been your host, Willow. You've been listening to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network, brought to you by Campbell's new chunky spicy soup. It's time to get fired up. Big thanks to our guests today, Trey Kerby, Savanna Hamilton, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.